Hi guys, and welcome back to the Caribbean Spot. In today's video, the call for reparations amplified at the latest UN meeting in New York. Let's get into this video. On April 15, 2025, at the United Nations in New York, a moment decades in the making took shape. For the first time, descendants of both enslaved Africans and British slave-owning families sat in the same forum, not in conflict, but in acknowledgement. Caribbean leaders, backed by years of advocacy through Caricom, used that global stage to make one thing clear. It's time for reparations, not in theory, in action. And nations like Grenada, Jamaica, and Guyana are no longer waiting. The British Empire profited. The Caribbean paid the price. Let's go back to the roots. When Britain abolished slavery in 1833, it didn't compensate the people who were brutalized, dehumanized, or displaced. It paid the people who enslaved them. Under the Slave Compensation Act of 1837, the British government gave £20 million, the equivalent of 17 billion pounds today, to over 40,000 slave-owning families across the empire. That included slave owners in Jamaica, Guyana, Barbados, Grenada, and beyond. The freed, they got no land, no support, no restitution. Just centuries of inherited poverty, broken systems, and global silence. Grenada, a rare apology but not reparations. In 2023, something rare happened. Laura Trevelyan, a former BBC journalist, traveled to Grenada and publicly apologized for her family's enslavement of over 1,000 people across 6 plantations. She didn't stop at words. She donated £100,000 toward education on the island, a symbolic act of personal accountability. But let's be clear, this was not reparations from Britain. This was a private gesture, not a state act. And Grenada remains the only Caribbean nation to receive even that much. But while Grenada remains the only island to receive a symbolic gesture from a British family, the wider call for reparations has never been about individual donations. It's about nations being held accountable. And this year, that call reached the global floor, loud and clear, inside the halls of the United Nations. On April 15, 2025, during the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent at the United Nations in New York, Caribbean voices took center stage, not with emotions, but with evidence, advocacy, and urgency. In one of the most significant sessions to date, Laura Trevelyan, representing a family deep ties to Caribbean slavery, reaffirmed her public acknowledgement of their role and expressed continued support for restorative justice. Charles Gladstone, descendant of British Prime Minister William Gladstone, followed suit, apologizing directly to Jamaica and Guyana for the wealth his family accumulated through slavery. Then we have Arlie Gill, chair of Grenada's National Reparations Commission, delivered a pointed message that echoed through the chamber. He stated, "We are on the right path to ensuring that these crimes against humanity are recognized by the colonial powers." And as the forum moved toward closing statements, Ambassador Walton Webson of Antigua, speaking as chair of the Caribbean Ambassadors Caucus, made it plain. Reparations is no longer taboo. It's time to put it on the lips of every child, every person, and begin taking action. This wasn't just a panel. It was a powerful convergence of history, accountability, and international resolve. And while Grenada was undeniably in the spotlight, the message from the wider Caribbean was unified and unrelenting. Justice is overdue, and silence is no longer an option. The words spoken at the UN were powerful. But Caribbean nations aren't just calling for recognition. They're calling for a roadmap. Because speeches fade. But structural repair requires policy, investment, and accountability. That's where the real work begins. From talk to tangible action. For years, the Caribbean has been laying that groundwork through Caricom reparations commissions. Their vision is clear, and it's written in what's known as the 10-point reparations plan, a comprehensive framework rooted in justice, restoration, and truth. It calls for full and formal state-issued apologies, not just regret, but legal and moral admission of responsibility. 2. Debt cancellation, recognizing that post-slavery colonial debt systems continue to strangle Caribbean economies. Can we get an amen on that? 3. Reparative investment in education and healthcare to reverse centuries of structural underdevelopment. Can the church say amen? Cultural institutions and healing programs, addressing the psychological and societal scars left by slavery. And lastly, the return of stolen cultural property held in European museums and archives. This isn't a vague wish list. It's a policy proposal grounded in international law, human rights, and historical fact. And now, with the African Union declaring 2025 as the year of justice, we come in, look out for we exposés. For people of African descent, Caribbean demands for reparations are no longer regional. They're part of a global justice agenda. The only thing missing now is commitment. But for all the global attention and carefully crafted plans, one question remains unanswered. Will the former colonial powers do more than listen? Because the Caribbean has spoken. The documents are on the table. The only thing left now is action. Will the world answer the call? The world is watching, and the silence from the former colonizers is growing louder by the day. To date, no British government has issued a formal apology for slavery. No reparations have been paid by France despite Haiti's independence ransom. The Netherlands, while recently acknowledging their role, have yet to implement material restitution. Meanwhile, the Caribbean, under-resourced but unrelenting, continues to carry the burden of colonial debt, cultural loss, and systemic inequality. The question is no longer whether reparations are justified. That debate is over. The facts are clear. What remains is whether the nations that built their wealth on Caribbean backs will now take responsibility or continue to benefit from injustice cloaked in diplomacy. Because until there's action, every apology is just performance. Reclaiming justice, reclaiming history. Reparations isn't about revenge. It's about repair, It's about telling the truth and putting weight behind words. Because justice without accountability is just performance. And silence from those who owe a debt is not neutrality, it's complicity. As Caribbean nations stand united, from Grenada to Jamaica, from Guyana to Antigua, the message is unmistakable. We will not beg to be acknowledged. We will demand to be repaired. Woe to those who build their houses by unrighteousness and their chambers by injustice. Jeremiah 22, verse 13. History would remember who responded with justice and who remained comfortable in stolen wealth. This is the Caribbean Spot, and we're not just reporting the news. We are reclaiming truth, we are reclaiming the narrative, and we will not be silent. Until the next one, bye.